Hello and welcome to the Side Quest Sages podcast. My name is Luke Tatum.
I'm Corey Sinz.
Welcome to the inaugural episode. We are super excited to chat with you all about the wonderful world of video games. In a nutshell, what this show is about is deep appreciation for the art form of video games. We're going to do narrative analysis. We're going to talk about gameplay. We're going to talk about all kinds of cool stuff, soundtracks, wonderful things like that. But this episode is mainly to sort of discuss all of those things and more or less hash out together what all we might do with this show. And in addition to that, to kind of round it out, Corey and I have both prepared a list of 10 influential video games in our lives. Not a top 10 games, not the 10 most important games, not the best games, but 10 games that meant a lot to us personally. And so we'll go through those briefly, and any of those 20 games between the two of us could be fertile ground for future episodes or future deep dives across multiple episodes. We'll get into all that. So let's just open up the discussion here to start with more about kind of what we're hoping to do with the show. So Corey, what is your take on that?
I'm really excited for this. This is really just combining a ton of my, as you would say, special interests. That being gaming is the overarch, but then the storytelling of games, the music, that brings us to these landscapes by themselves, brings our moods into the picture without any words. So those kinds of things, I'm really looking forward to doing that with you. And I really thought about doing this in the past with you because you've really pushed me into some other games. And when this kind of came around, I was really kind of on board and a little sheepish about it. But man, I'm so stoked to be here to be a part of this. And I think I've got some unique and some expected ones on my list. That's for sure.
You know, gosh, I think I have some unique and some unexpected ones too. But some definitely ones that are run of the mill. Anybody is going to have these, right? Spoiler alert: one of them is Half-Life 2, right? So that is, is there enough Half-Life content out there on the internet? I think that's a question worth asking. Maybe not, but some people might be sick of seeing it. I didn't put a whole bunch of games on my list too, because it's only 10. I could probably list 100 games that are influential in my life. And, what I'll probably do, or what Nick will probably do in post on this episode, is to just pull up the entire list of all 20 games and show that all on screen before we even get through all of them, just so you sort of have a preview of what's to come in the episode. But I would love to sort of talk about inspirations for maybe what's bringing us to this podcast, what's bringing us together to do this. I absolutely adore a couple of channels here on YouTube, one of them being Resonant Arc, which is Mike and Kaysen talking about stuff. They did like 50 some hours about Xenogears, which is a super, super, super important game for me. And, that's kind of how I got into them. And then Max Derrat, who does like real deep, analysis on stuff like Silent Hill and Legend of Zelda games and other stuff like that. And it's just, that's what I do. When I'm washing the dishes, I'm listening to deep analysis on the narratives of video games from 26 years ago. That's what I do. And I just thought, I've absorbed a lot of that stuff, but also you and I share an interest in things like Jungian philosophy, and I mean, psychology, not philosophy, and all of those things. And so all of those things kind of brought together, I think we've got something to say about some of that. What do you think?
I'm excited to bring that piece because for me, what this is going to be is to do a little bit more internal work. It was something that I don't want to call this like shadow work, but it's definitely, I want to understand it. I want to understand others. I want to understand how all the things are connected, and with these stories, with the gameplay, the music, like I mentioned before. And that's where I kind of see it, and that's where I kind of gravitated to. You mentioned Max, and I've listened to a lot of his different shows where he in the short amount of time he's able to concisely put those stories together and unfold them for us. I want to approach something like that.
Yeah, Max's videos, like he's doing a script, right? He's coming from a place of like, I've done a ton of research. I'm going to pull all this together, bring up a bunch of visual aids. His work on Ion, Carl Jung's Ion, helped me actually understand what that is about in a significant way, because that is not an easy book to read by any means. I've had the audiobook for years now, and it's like, whoo boy, like, and I've read some pretty thick books, but that is not an easy one. And so that kind of stuff, taking really complex stuff and making it accessible for a layman. I mean, that's what I appreciate about a deep analysis on, say, Xenogears too. It's like there are so many ideas and inspirations and little threads that you have to kind of follow to really like appreciate that game. Now, I've played Xenogears, you have not, and so that's a game that we are not tackling first, no matter what. Okay, that is not a first time entry for the podcast. That is a major undertaking. Uh, but you know, any game, whether it's, Mass Effect or Jade Empire, any of the BioWare type RPGs, or maybe really old stuff, Baldur's Gate 1, Baldur's Gate 2, Icewind Dale, you know, some of these like Forgotten Realms era things. Any games like that that have a really, really rich narrative focus, we could we could do a bunch of stuff on that. But if it's a really, really cool game just from a gameplay standpoint and it has an incredible soundtrack, maybe we do a soundtrack analysis. How does this impact the scene? How does this help tell the story, even though the story itself is not that deep? You know, uh, Game that comes to mind there would be a game like Fury, Furi, which is basically Afro Samurai, except it's not. It's like sort of a sci-fi Afro Samurai, and it's like you just got to fight these bosses, and because you want to get the number one headband. That's basically what it is. Um, but the music and the setting and the art style and all, I think that could still be a really cool discussion, and so maybe that's what distinguishes us from a show like, say, Resonant Arc, where they're doing Final Fantasy and then another Final Fantasy and then another Final Fantasy, because those are deep, narrative heavy JRPGs that take 20 episodes. We don't have to do that. I mean, I'm kind of just spitballing and sort of speaking for you. You know what I mean? But I think we could go a lot of places with this, and I can't wait to see what people would like to see us cover.
One of the thoughts I had was that there are some games that are staples that if I mentioned on this, that people might be upset and say, what is your problem, man? Why haven't you played Final Fantasy? Haven't played Final Fantasy, not one bit. So I wonder if doing something like that and experiencing me having experienced it for the first time, and someone who I can't recall if you've had any experience with Final Fantasy, just as an example, seeing it through, you could take me through a couple of curated scenes, maybe, or talk about a few things. Maybe I'll get the game and play it, and then we can kind of do an after action report and things like that. I'm very interested to see where this goes, and see where viewers are looking for, listeners.
Yeah, like this is going to be uploaded on my reaction channel, right? Man in the Wrong Place, right? So may have to change the name of some of our content and our, like, uh support the channel page and some of this stuff to kind of adapt to the fact that we're doing this podcast now. But like, it's a reaction channel, and so that could actually be a lot of fun to do. Like, say I've never played Final Fantasy 9 and you say you've never played any of the Final Fantasies, so like we could watch a trailer for Final Fantasy 9 and sort of react to that and talk about it before we play the game or something like that. You know, um, I've played, as far as Final Fantasy goes, I played 1, 4, 6, 7, and 13. Oh, and like the first hour of 10. And that's it. So, it's very sporadic. Like, I know there's a whole bunch of lore and history and stuff with all those, but um, Final Fantasy has never been like my thing. I've been into other Square stuff such as Chrono Trigger and gosh, I should have put that on my list of 10 games. Um, but the Chrono games, Chrono Cross and Chrono Trigger, and then some of the just I don't know, like Final Fantasy turned into such a franchise thing. For me, 6 was it, man. 6 is an amazing, transformative, like once in a 100-year piece of art. And I just had no, like, I played 7, but I liked 6 more, even though it was Super Nintendo graphics and stuff, right? um, so there's so many places, and obviously, we could do this podcast for 5 years, 10 years, just playing JRPGs. But there's a lot of other games out there that deserve attention too. And, I would love to do some maybe underappreciated gems. So
Yes.
maybe this is a good opportunity, Corey. Maybe we should go into our lists and just sort
Yeah.
of start talking about those because I feel like we're kind of almost doing that anyway. uh,
Let's begin then.
okay, so I'm going to just read my list real quick and then I'll let you read yours and then we'll sort of uh, pick them apart. So just names only. I know I told you we were going to do a different format and I'm changing my mind. I'm altering the deal. Pray I do not alter it further. So my 10 games are, and this is not in any kind of order. They're not most influential first or anything. It's just the order I thought of them. Warcraft 1, Mega Man 1, Dragon Warrior 1. It's got a lot of ones. Phantasy Star Online episodes 1 and 2. I'm talking about the GameCube version. Myst Incoming, which some people might know as Rage Incoming. Xenoblade Chronicles, Half-Life 2, Zero Ranger, and Metroid Prime.
Very respectable list. Here's mine. I have Civilization. That one's going to range a couple games. I'm going to do Age of Empires 2, Arcanum of Steamwork and Magica, Ocarina of Time, Assassin's Creed 2. I'll pick out the twos in my list. Diablo 2, Heroes of Might and Magic 3. And then Star Wars Rogue Squadron is kind of a placeholder for many games of that era for me, but it was one that we can talk about later on. And then Elder Scrolls Oblivion. And then last but not least, Pokemon. Red, blue, yellow, gold. Any of those.
Okay. And that was the last one?
That was the last one.
Okay. So I think let's trade now. So I'm going to talk about the first game just for a quick second, and then I'll pass it to you. You do your first game in a little bit more detail. I hate those things where it's like, we're going to do the top 10 games ever, and you literally have to listen for 97 minutes before you find out what the number one game is. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to do that. So okay, my first game is Warcraft, and I'll tell a quick story. So my friend, this was not a super close friend of mine, but my friend, when I'm like super young, I don't know, probably 8 or 7 years old or something like that, on his old computer in the living room, he has this game that he's like, hey, I'm going to show you this. And it's Warcraft 1, and it's like you click and drag to select multiple units and you send them around, and it's orcs versus humans, right? So if you haven't played the original Warcraft, it's orcs and humans. And this is the strangest manual. It actually flips in the middle. So this text is upside down, but if I turn one page back, it's right side up, right? It's the same instructions 2 times. It's like if you're a human faction character, read it like this. But if you're an orc faction character, flip it around and then read it It's so weird. I don't know why they did that. But I've had the manual for whatever 1996 or whatever year that came out. I've had it forever. And so um but I instantly fell in love with that game. Like I absolutely could not believe that you could control multiple different units and they could go attack different things and you could send units to go harvest gold out of a gold mine and it had this sweet music. Like I could talk about those, Derek Duke and some of those guys that worked on the Warcraft 1 and 2 soundtracks and stuff. Incredible. I love music that's like based in limitations. I'm turning this into way too long of a point. We're never going to finish our list. Oh my gosh. Um, but Warcraft 1, like I played Warcraft 1, 2, Tides of Darkness, StarCraft, Brood War, Warcraft 3, all of them, all of them. It sent me into such a lifelong love of strategy games, real-time strategy specifically. And that is why I ended up wasting, or I should say, spending thousands of hours of my life playing StarCraft and like watching Korean games and stuff like that. So big influence, to say the least. Okay, what's your game?
I'm going to follow up your college degree with my bachelor's in civilization, and that started off with Civilization 3 had come out. And I probably should have roughed up some times in my head, so this is going to kind of jumble around in different eras of my life. But um, having the the wonders, the actual civilizations that you could play as, at that first time, it was the first time I'd experienced playing as Romans was kind of a really cool thing. Being really confused why Gandhi was really into nuclear weapons. Um, that was certainly something that was maybe one of the first times where you're like, maybe I should start questioning what I'm being taught. No, but also having that addiction to just one more turn. Just I've got this. If I don't do it, I'm gonna forget it. So those are kind of just a few of the touches of what were special about Civilization for me. In fact, actually, one last thought was the Hagia Sophia, building that. I remember seeing that for the first time and understanding how great of a building it was. And in 2023, I was actually able to go and experience that in real life. One of the real wonders of the world, or not the wonders, modern wonders, but I did some ancient wonders as well, and brought the game even more to life for me.
That is super cool. And I'm going to take advantage of my time. We're not in Congress or something where we have a clock, right? So I'm going to just say a bonus game, Pharaoh. Like my mother and I both love this game. Pharaoh is a game, it's a city builder, real time strategy, but you can pause it where you could build stuff. And so the wonders in Civilization, I didn't get into Civilization until later, but you could build pyramids, right? The pyramids. And so it's like massive and it took forever, forever in real life, accelerating time using a computer game to build, watch these guys drag their, pallets of stones up their ramps to go around to the top to, it was crazy. It was crazy. And it took up like the whole freaking screen on your old CRT PC, and it was just like, this is the coolest thing in the world, managing your economy and stuff. Um, Huge subject matter change. My second game is Mega Man. Okay, so it has nothing to do with ancient Egypt. But Mega Man 1, I just have a very specific key memory. Like, I love platformers, 2D platformers, and who doesn't? But this is going to sound stupid, okay? But one day, and I don't even remember what boss it is for Mega Man 1, but I had rented Mega Man 1 from Movie Gallery, which was a thing at the time, and I was so frustrated as a, like, 4-year-old trying to beat this boss, and couldn't do it, couldn't do it. I was mad, and I was telling my dad how mad I was or whatever. And it was lunchtime, and I was hungry. So I went and ate a sandwich, and I came back, and man, I beat that boss so hard the very first time when I came back, right? Because I had recharged my system. I had stepped away. I had reset my like emotional state a little bit, and I filled my stomach. And so anyway, that's my lifelong relationship with food now, is to go, you know what? We're all upset. Let's just take a break and eat. Mega Man is a great game. Okay, so don't get me wrong. It's not that that is the only positive thing I have to say, but um, that is just it's a little core memory that, like, you know what, we're all just upset. Let's all take a break, have a pizza or something, and come back at it from a with a fresh mind after we get some food in our bellies. So, I that's it. That's all I have to say about that.
I actually don't have all that much to say on Age of Empires 2 for myself. It's more of that was just a time period. Again, it's more of the same similar stuff as Civilization, learning different cultures and things like that as best you can with Age of Empires. But really, what stood out for me were the little vignette stories that they had for individuals. So, like William Wallace was one of them for Scotland. You had a crusader who had been captured by the Saracens, and he goes from being, a Christian crusader to understanding, um, that his captors are also humans too, and it is just a really interesting dichotomy of seeing those different stories develop in those gameplays and playing along with it at the same time. So really, it's just what stories do. They embed it into your memory, and so that's where that kind of came with for Age of Empires too.
I just had a really good idea. So, something that annoys the hell out of me is historical fiction, like, well, even like supposedly accurate historical movies or something, like a movie about Abe Lincoln, or the movie Braveheart. You mentioned William Wallace, right? You know, if you watch a movie about history, that's the only visual you're ever going to have for that, right? That is a living, breathing visual tale. And so it sort of like overrides, at least for me, the memories that I have from studying the original core material of what actually happened. So if they add a love interest or they change something here or there, about a few years in, if you've watched that movie, especially if you really liked it and watched it a couple of times, you don't remember. And so it'd be really interesting to kind of talk about some of these historical set games, and maybe like, I don't want to pretend like we're experts on every period of history or something stupid like that. But, like, what did they change? And do you actually realize that you're thinking about history wrong now? That kind of stuff. That could be fun. By the way, have you played Mega Man and Warcraft? I thought we might speak on whether or not we've played them.
So I have not actually. I was aware of Mega Man. I'd seen some of the cartoons. I did not play Warhammer because, as you'll see on my list later on, where we get to Diablo 2, and that's where I spent most of my time doing kind of the MMOs at that time period in my life.
Well, so yeah, I mean, World of Warcraft completely different, right? But Warcraft one, the RTS, it's super old. I don't even know if it runs on anything like that. Might not even be possible to do. But just curious. So my next one is actually an RPG, which, we're getting into storytelling and all that kind of stuff. I didn't want to just list 10 RPGs. I thought that wouldn't be that interesting. So my next one is Dragon Warrior, which is also known as Dragon Quest. Akira Toriyama did the character design and all this stuff of Dragon Ball fame and all that. And so, but Dragon Warrior is like a very one dimensional story. It's like, you need to go save the princess and defeat the evil dragon lord. Like that's pretty much what the plot is. And it's just such a like iconic first entry. Like the format that is established in Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior is is the thing that became JRPGs. Like that is what sort of codified what a JRPG is. You go from town to town, you upgrade your equipment, you have conversations with the townspeople. It's safe in town, but it's dangerous between towns, all that stuff. Like Final Fantasy 1 has some of these other elements, but Final Fantasy 1 is trying to be Dungeons and Dragons. Dragon Warrior like kind of establishes what a JRPG is, and I had both of those games on the NES, Final Fantasy 1 and Dragon Warrior, and I played the hell out of Dragon Warrior. Like just so much. I actually, this is a stupid nerdy thing. I recreated the entire first castle, like the starting area castle from Dragon Warrior in No Man's Sky a few years back. It was kind of a present to my friend who's obsessed with Dragon Quest. But it's just like it's just a hero's journey. It's a very simple hero's journey. It's got this cool thing like you go across a bridge and then all of a sudden all the monsters are higher level. It's kind of got this weird level gating in that way. It's just there's a lot of really interesting things there. It'd be very fun to do a extended thing about. But um and also the NPCs. They would give you these stupid things like there's this item hidden and it's like walk 6 steps to the west and then two steps south, and you'll find this. Like that's some kind of legend or something. And then you go to this place and do that, and it's like, oh, you discovered something. You push A and you discover some item. It's like, what? It's not like you dig a hole or it's just you just push A. It's like anybody could have tripped over this for the last 100 years or something. It's just so weird. But the limitations of the time. Um, I love that game. Okay, so I've ranted enough on that. What's your third one?
We still love them though. They're flawed today by today's standards, but they're wonderful in the moment. We still have that power of nostalgia. For me, this is definitely one of those games that um, I've never recommended it to anybody, only because there's such a high learning curve on it. It is called Arcanum of Steamwork and Magica. It plays the kind of magic versus technology aspect, and so you get a world, and this is basically my first foray into a visual D&D at that time in my life as a probably right around 10, 11 year old. So I didn't have any resources for D&D at that time. I was vaguely familiar with it. I had some friends who had some books, but this is what got me interested into more of the RPGs at this time. And it is really rough. The graphics are rough, but you have such an expansive. You were just talking about the safe towns. You have safe towns in a way, but you can go into different places that aren't quite as safe. You can make choices similar to how Fallout is. You can do the bad choices and things. So that was my first trying to do some moral choices, or um, becoming the bad guy, and seeing how that affected, doing different playthroughs, and that was still is. In fact, I'm due for another playthrough. And now that I'm saying this, I'm just getting. I want to. You can be an elf, you can be a dwarf, a gnome, a human. Most of the human towns are tech. They're in a steampunk age in a way. Magic doesn't work around machines, and vice versa. Um, so you can do the middle of the road and maybe be a melee kind of character, and kind of bridge it a little bit and do both, but not very well. Or you can go hard into magic and be the magician, and have 12 different branches of magic. At that time was amazing. And in that way, I think it still holds up. I haven't played any Baldur's Gates, but I imagine it's similar to that. So that's another thing that I'm definitely going to be getting into. We'll get there in the future. What's number 4 for you?
Yeah, number 4 for me is Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2. I have to say Arcanum before I get into that. Is that a PC game or like what is that?
Oh, yes, yes. I'm so sorry. Yeah, it is a PC game,
Okay.
and you can still run it on Steam.
Yeah, I've never played it. You have mentioned it to me in passing, I think, before, because y'all who don't know us, like we've known each other for a few years, and so we've had lots of conversations about games before we started this podcast. But it sounds interesting. I'd love to check it out if there's an appetite for that. I mean, let's definitely play that game. That would be fun. But yeah, so my number 4 is Phantasy Star Online episodes 1 and 2. So I'm talking about the GameCube version. This game is also on the Dreamcast, just as Phantasy Star Online, and then it's also on PC as Phantasy Star Online Blue Burst. Like, there's a bunch of names for it, but it's so unique. And if I was going to develop like a game, if I was going to put together a little team to make a game at this point in my life, I think that's what I would try to replicate is this kind of like zoned, like it's a quasi MMO. It is an MMO, but you form a little party and you're not in it's not World of Warcraft, right? You're not in a huge open expansive world and you just run into other people. It's like lobbies and then you go to a specific zone to do a specific quest with a specific group of people and it's not that like it doesn't just go on and on and on forever. Like for example, you have the mines. You go to the mines. There's a mines 1 and you're going to run out of rooms. And there's a mines 2 and then you fight the boss and like that's it, you know, like there's not it isn't a contemporary MMO, you know, in that way. But what's cool about that game, number one, it's just that it's a vibe. Like I think more than anything else, it is just a certain spirit, a certain energy from a certain period of time. It's that low poly PS1, Nintendo 64, GameCube sort of hybrid sort of range. You know, it's a little nicer looking than the N64, but it's really not the best looking game in the world. But it's still really beautiful in a certain way. You know what I mean? It's just this it's this kind of vibe. The soundtrack is unforgettable and I listen to it all the time. I still play this game on a private server from time to time on PC. And like it's not the story is nothing spectacular. The gameplay is repetitive and yet like on my old GameCube memory card I had a character with like 1200 hours. You know, I just it specifically about the GameCube version. You could have your memory card, right? And you could take it to a friend's house and you could play 4-player split screen. You could play an MMO locally together and then take your character progress and go play on your same character back home, right? Like how freaking cool is that? And so nobody's ever done that since, right? Even the PC version, you can't play split screen. So it's this unique thing. I just adore it. I adore split screen multiplayer. So I think that's all I have to say about that. Really, just it is a hell of a good time.
Making me think of Goldeneye for that split screen action too, or Perfect Dark or something like that. Um, so going back to a little further from the GameCube, we're going to the 64, and I I feel like anybody who had a 64 remembers where they were the first time that they went to Hyrule Field. It was magic for my fourth grade body in my mind. And I actually originally saw this game at a friend's house, went home after playing the Deku Tree mission in the beginning, like went under the couch cushions, went into my piggy bank that was a large crayon. I took the little bottom part out that was the eraser, took all the coins, the pennies, and then brought them all together and counted out enough and found singles and begged and borrowed other people so that I could get this game. And a few days later, I rode my bike down to Target, or no, it was GameStop, excuse me, at that time, and got it. And the story continues on that I was so enamored with this game. I got to the water temple and I was having a difficult time, and decided to skip school in fourth grade. And my fourth grade brain was like, okay, well, I'm going to unplug the answering machine and the phones at home so the school couldn't call and be like, oh, where's Corey today? Well, I didn't anticipate that they'd have my mom's work number, and she comes home and is livid with me. I tried to hide that I was playing a game. She got to me, and so I had to put that on hold for about 2 weeks. But so that's kind of where that comes from, and everybody who's played it knows what kind of magic that game is.
Yeah, you know, I could easily launch into my own stories. I mean, this is an era where everything that you did didn't track your time spent and stuff. And so, like, I have no idea how many hundreds of hours I spent in Ocarina of Time, but my God, we played that game a lot, you know, like entire afternoons just fishing at the fishing thing at Lake Hylia, you know, like stuff like how, you know, part of that is your brain's not fully developed, right? You haven't like everything isn't old hat by that point, right? And that's the era that we grew up in and stuff. But like, it's just Yeah, that game is incredible. I'm glad that only one of us put it on our list because I'm glad we have 20 unique games. Um, yeah. Anyway, my next game is Myst, Myst. If you've never played it, the original point and click adventure game. This is kind of when text-based adventure migrated to the PC, and you had fully like what they would call a FMV, like a video sequence, of a live actor in a computer game in a digital world setting. So like crazy stuff. At the time, it was mind blowing. This is like Windows 3.1. You know, you're playing the stupidest, worst graphics, the game where you throw bananas that explode, whatever that is, gorillas or whatever, that kind of stuff. And then it became a full 3D and you click to move to a new space. You're not really moving. It's not Wolfenstein, right? It loads the next screen. It's not a full 3D movement, but it felt like that at the time because it was so cool. And I just put it on the list because my family, my mom and my dad and me, we all spent a lot of time. We never finished it, but we spent a lot of time playing Myst together on that old Windows computer. And we actually had the Blizzard Entertainment. They used to include little like free merchandise with their stuff. So there was a notebook that's every page had a little, low opacity watermark of Blizzard Entertainment kind of behind each page, a white piece of paper about yay big, and you could scribble notes. I had a notepad in there, and so we took pages and pages and pages and pages of notes of how we were attempting to solve these puzzles and Myst and stuff together. And for years, I still had those notes, for a long time. But it's just again, this is a nostalgia thing. It's not that game is the game. It's just it was a cool opportunity for us to try to figure this stuff out because those are not easy puzzles. If you know how to play Myst, you can win the game in like 3 minutes. But if you don't know and you're going through it, it could take you the rest of your life. Those things are so complicated, you know. Um, and so it's just a personal, warm fuzzy feeling for me playing that game.
It's a game that came out in the last, well, I want to say a couple of years, but it was probably like 5 or 10 years now. I think it was like The Witness or something. It's a big, colorful landscape. I'm gonna have to look into that game again because I remember playing that and remember it kind of brought me to that Myst. And that one is fully explorable and it doesn't do that loading screen. But man, I remember a lot of those games, and I actually kind of forgot about it until you reminded me. So thank you. And for me, this number five is Assassin's Creed 2. Uh, Many people might have played Assassin's Creed 1. I liked that game. It was fun, but it was very repetitive, and it was a great platform to bounce off and do some new things. But Assassin's Creed 2 is where I think they really hit a good stride with being able to climb the buildings really well. The designs of all of the buildings in Florence, the dialogue about there was a speech about don't follow me as the main character Ezio. This is on PC that I played this. He's addressing a mob crowd, and the mob is looking to do some changes, but he said, don't think for yourself and don't follow me, follow your intuition, basically, those kinds of things. And that really struck me. A lot of those dialogues really brought me to question a lot of things, so that we'll probably talk about these kinds of games more in the future. I'm going to kind of leave it at that for now.
Okay, yeah. One quick thing I'll say about Assassin's Creed 2 is I was in college at that time, my Xbox 360. I stopped going to class. I played that game almost continuously, except for sleeping. And I didn't even sleep that much. I just nonstop for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. I played that game. And I love the first one. But yeah, there was something really special about AC2 that I just couldn't put it down. And I'll also tell you, I did not give Leonardo da Vinci a hug when the QuickTime event appeared, and I was so mad I played the game again just so I could do that.
Actually, one thing about Assassin's Creed that really stuck out for me too was that it was um, a good place to. Yeah, I lost my train of thought. Shit. Well, well, yeah. What were you saying? You were saying um,
Leonardo da Vinci and hugs. I didn't give
for.
him a hug, and I replayed it.
Uh, so the what really actually got me on Assassin's Creed 2, what the story was going between the genetic memories and now, and that was really a cool take. And it's kind of a way that I would say that time travel was done well in a fashion.
Yeah. Sorry to cut you off. I just the Animus and some of those things and the Jungian ideas and some of that, like that is a whole thing. We could really, really talk about that.
I think we know that's going to be in one of the future episodes very very soon. So
Yeah, whether anybody wants it or not, I think we'll probably do that one. Um, you know, I've got about 15 more minutes where I have to wrap up. So, well, I'm going to pick up the pace slightly on mine and not tell such long stories. Um, okay. Okay. So, the next one is Incoming. It's called, the game was made by a company called Rage, and I think they only ever made one game. So some people call it Rage Incoming. It was packed in with a series of compact PCs back when Compaq was a brand, COMPAQ, Compaq. Um, and that game, it's a helicopter game. Like some of the levels you're in a helicopter, some of the levels you're in a gun emplacement like a turret shooting stuff. Later on, you're in like an alien ship. But I got to tell you, the soundtrack for that game, you could take the game disc and you could put it in a CD player, and it was like the sickest, like alien sci-fi drum and bass music. Like, and this was at a time that I was already getting into that sort of thing because that was sort of the style, I guess, at that time. Like, the electronic music was evolving in that direction, and the game itself is not particularly great. I've played it several times, but dude, the soundtrack just sells it. You don't even have to have a good game if the soundtrack is that good, you know? And so that's my takeaway from that. It totally incredible. If the composer for that game would like make themselves known, I will find you and I will give you a hug. Okay. So that's all I have to say about that.
for me, we move on to less of maybe storytelling and more addiction seeking of Diablo II loot drops. It's just that was like boom, dopamine after dopamine. Finding the different tiered weapons, and then later on they added runes and things like that. Man, I play Path of Exile 2, and I love that I'm able to get that high still from adventuring and things like that.
It's amazing that it's still, like, has it created an obsession in, like, a whole generation of people to try to recreate the magic of the D2, like, loot drop cycle. It's just lightning in a bottle. It is an incredible, incredible feedback loop, that game. I love it too, but back when Blizzard was a good company.
Right. That's
So
why we recommend Path of Exile 2.
that's right. Official endorsement. Um, Xenoblade Chronicles is my next one. That is such a big topic. It gets into the Xeno series, Xeno Saga, Xenogears. Um, it's so dang much, so there's no way I could do any kind of justice to that title. But I have to say that that game inspired me to play all the other ones. I still haven't played Xeno Saga 2 and 3, but Xenogears, I wouldn't have played Xenogears because I never had a PlayStation as a kid. I wouldn't have played Xenogears ever if I had not played Xenoblade Chronicles. And I just have to, I can't believe, like, to this day, I think about the Xeno games every day, and it's an unbelievable level of complex and what's the right word here? Fulfilling storytelling. Like, it changed my life. And, you and I both have played Xenoblade Chronicles. So that is definitely fertile ground for more conversation. But what a freaking game, man. All of them.
Another game, another game series that we will absolutely touch on because that was transformative. Xenoblade was transformative for me. I have yet to play 2 and 3. For me, on number 7 is Heroes of Might and Magic 3. That was turn based. It was my first computer game that was a legitimate like game. This brought me to fantasy so well, and the faction system. You could play the evil guys, the good knights, the demons, the dark dwellers, all of that, and so you could kind of customize it in that time period somewhat. So um, that was another, one more turn kind of games for me.
Yeah. Great game. That's another game my mom and I both liked. We did a lot of PC gaming together way back in the day. So,
I didn't
cool
know that
stuff.
about you actually.
Yeah, Lords of the Realm 2, Here's Might Magic, a lot of those old strategy games and stuff. The Settlers, if you've ever heard of that. Anyway, but my next game, it's another big one, Half-Life 2. Half-Life 2, I think, is the kind of game that you could sit there and you could do a freaking hour-long podcast just about the way that, like, it's presented, you know, before you even talk about the soundtrack, before you just the world building and the way that things get introduced to you is like, it is a masterclass in game design, right? And Valve has this whole thing where something should be happening to you unless you're standing still, right? If you're moving through the game, something should be happening to you every 30 seconds so that you don't get bored. And it's a game. It's supposed to engage you. It's not just walk from here to there. And that, I mean, and it gets even better in episode 1 and episode 2. And I'm on Team Hopium. I believe we're going to get Half-Life 3 really, really soon. So, you know, it's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable how good of a game that is and how well it stands up even to other games like in the 10 years after.
I agree, and so my perspective on that was that you had suggested me playing it in the last year or two, and so I played every single one of those games, and um, if I think there was one or two that I didn't get, and I just watched, and some of the smaller ones I didn't. I decided not to buy, but Valve just does games proper. Speaking from my Portal experience, it just wonderful storytelling, wonderful, meaningful things to do. And so I completely agree with you on that.
You know, I'm resisting the urge to go in and like say a
I
whole
know, I
bunch
know,
of
I
stuff
know.
about.
We just, yeah, we're just hitting all these high
Yeah,
topics, and the next one
yeah.
is one that we talk about for a long time. Um, is more of, it's like I said, it's the placeholder for N64 and Rogue Squadron, and that was, for me, that was the family game. And a memorable story is that that's basically the game where I was able to swear in front of my parents for the first time, and yeah, so that was kind of a fun thing. We would play each of the missions and try to get. They had the 3 different tiers if you medaled. You had the bronze, silver, and gold, and always trying for that gold. And so you had the stipulations to meet that, the time requirements and things like that. So we would go back and forth and just take turns back and forth. So
That's awesome. My uncle introduced me to the very, very old DOS games, X-Wing and TIE Fighter. And he was big into like simulate. He still is. He plays like World of War planes or whatever, like some of these games where you like simulate hardcore simulation games where he has a joystick and all this stuff. And I just was like, oh, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen, because at that time with the graphic level that we had achieved back then, it's like it's just like the movie, right? And it's like it looks awful, right? But it's real life. I'm really in the Death Star trench. Um, that's another topic maybe. But okay, my next game is Zero Ranger. This is an indie game. It is not super duper well known. It is a 2D like top down shoot 'em up type game in the style of the Raiden games or Raiden, however you say it, and like it's not like R type. It's not from the side. It's top down. So Ikaruga games like I don't think you've played any of those games unless I'm mistaken. But um, Zero Ranger, the reason that I put this on my list is because it does so much storytelling without hardly any actual telling you any story, right? Just if Valve is the master of like pacing and putting you through stuff, this game, this System Erasure is the name of the studio. I think it's like 2 people. They are so incredibly good at just pulling you through the experience. And the whole thing is this huge like Buddhist metaphor and stuff. And it's like there's like no text in that game almost at all. And so for you to be able to communicate Buddhist ideas in a game without any text, like it's crazy. It's crazy. And unbelievable. It just that's another game I think about a lot. For a game that I've played maybe about 25 hours, it's a shoot 'em up game. How much could you possibly play? It's 8 levels, Um it occupies a completely disproportionate amount of my thought cycles. It's like, God dang, that game is so crazy. So have to shout out to my brother-in-law for introducing me to that. But it's got all the right influences, perfect soundtrack. It's unbelievable. So that's my number 9. I think we're on 9.
Yep, my number 9 is Elder Scrolls Oblivion. This also is kind of a stand-in for, I think, for Fallout as well. Just kind of those kind of games. This one doesn't get the glory that Skyrim does, but this one was visually at that time. I played Morrowind, was still kind of confused about a lot of things with Morrowind, but I liked it enough that when I saw this game, I was like, I absolutely have to play it. And then that's where you get things like the stories with each of the different factions that were done so well. Like the Gray Fox is one that always comes to mind, and that was really impactful for me going in through middle school, and then later on I deployed and um, played it over and over while I was deployed, waiting until 2011, years later, to get Skyrim. But I think we're just gonna call it on that because we that's another one.
All day long, baby. That game is something else. Um, okay, my last one is Metroid Prime, the first one. Really, all the Metroid Prime games, but like Prime 1 is the one that I played over and over and over and over and over. And I think that's not a unique story to tell. And that's what got me into Metroid. And I have a whole shelf of Metroid stuff. My amiibos are at the house because I've been playing Metroid Prime 4. And so I'm like scanning them on my little Switch 2 NFC reader. So whatever. It's not my office right now. I'll bring them back soon. But like Metroid, again, right? Like all day conversation. There's so much that's wonderful about that, but Prime 1, it's one of those examples of translating a 2D game franchise into 3D that was just flawlessly executed, right? It's like people always talk about Super Mario 64. To me, Metroid Prime is like another equally perfect example. It's, Super Metroid is a phenomenal game and I love it to death. But I played it after I played Metroid Prime. And I played it because Metroid Prime is that good. It's like, what a cool universe and a cool protagonist and all this. So maybe that's all I can. That's as short as I can make it.
I'll jump in just to stop you because I know, but I think that I played the Metroid Prime, and just kind of what you were saying, it's really fantastic when you can play a game that's 10, 15 years in the future now, and then go back because they're so good. And you can say, well, I don't care about the graphics. Yeah, the gameplay is a little flawed and weird, but just the fact that you do that. And tying into one of those for myself is Pokemon. I've actually um I've actually enjoyed the older Pokemon better than all the new Pokemon? And is that just, me, old man, get off my lawn, kind of thing? Kind of, but I feel like they really gold, blue, yellow, gold, or I said gold. Yeah, we'll just name colors, all the colors. No,
Magenta version, that's definitely my favorite. Yeah.
awesome. And I didn't some of those I didn't play, and
Kid.
uh, they moved into diamonds, and diamonds are Pokemon's best friend or things like that. But all that to say, yeah, it's a good comfy game that I try to get back to, but I have not found. I need to buy a new one. Is what I need to do, because I hate Pokemon. Or let's go Pikachu and let's go Eevee. I didn't like that style. I'm gonna say that as a hurtful thing at the end. No, uh, do better, Pokemon Company, but with my nostalgia. I think that kind of wraps up our list. I'm really excited for our next topic. I kind of think we'll come up with something, but I'd love to hear what our listeners and viewers what they are interested in. They might have heard some of the different games that we mentioned that aren't on this list. Please, shout out, like speak from the rooftops. Let's do this, because these are some fun games and we really want to experience them.
Yeah, and we really want to provide like a truly in-depth look at some stuff. So when we say a deep dive, I don't mean another 30-minute podcast episode. Oh, yep, that game was really good, and then haha, and then we wrap it up. Like I'm okay with doing a 12-part series on something where we walk through it and maybe even play the games together. It's one of my favorite things that they do over at Resonant Arc is, like, okay, play up to this point for next week or something. I don't know if we're going to stick to the schedule like that, but we're we're open to that, and I think we have a lot of cool ideas we could pull in to really pull apart what makes some of these truly amazing games so special and so loved. So, uh, Corey, I gotta appreciate you here. I gotta just say thanks for that. Thank you all for watching and listening. We will see you all next week on Side Quest Sages. Till next time.
Yeah.